everyone, and welcome to today's live stream. I am doing this live stream today in response to multiple questions that I have received from people who are wondering how to feed their pet goats. Now, this is like one of the biggest myths in the whole animal kingdom is that goats can eat anything. I've been raising goats for 23 years, and I think I have heard it all. I have had people ask me if goats can eat their garbage. I've had people ask me very honestly if goats could eat tin cans. And in fact, I even had one woman telling me that they had a pet goat when she was growing up and it did eat tin cans, which I'm just really sad to think about that. Like somebody must have played a terrible prank on her when she was a little girl to make her think that a goat could eat a tin can. So anyway, you do hear a lot of misinformation. In fact, you may have noticed that I have a video on here about why I have an application for purchasing goats for me, because this weeds out a lot of people who have clearly not done any of their homework and they don't know how to feed a goat so that it's going to be healthy. In fact, a lot of goats could wind up dead if people don't do their homework before they take them home. It's kind of crazy. Nobody thinks that you can just feed other animals whatever. But, unfortunately, goats have this weird reputation that they can eat anything. So I'm here to dispel that myth today. So whether you're new to goats yourself and you're looking for information, or whether you raise goats and you want to be able to give a video to somebody that's buying kids from you so that they know how to feed their kids when they take them home, that's what I'm going to cover in today's video. So first of all, if you sell baby goats, if they're sold as babies, what they eat as growing kids is going to be different than what they are going to need to eat as adults. Typically, wethers are going to be your best pet. So a wether is a castrated male. And first of all, they're cheaper. A reputable breeder will castrate them before they sell them to you. So you don't have to take them to the vet to get them, neutered like you do a dog or a cat. And so you take home your weathered baby goat, but it's really important that you feed it correctly. A lot of people place way too much emphasis on the idea of early versus late castration. And we're talking about like early is anything less than 2 months. That is definitely not good. But castration does not cause urinary stones. Diet causes urinary stones. Now, I've got a lot of articles on my website about urinary stones. We did a podcast with Dr. Van Son, a vet professor and ruminant nutritionist from Penn State University. So we've got that podcast episode about that. And then I've also got an article on my website that I put up just within the last couple of weeks that talks about struvite stones and correct usage of ammonium chloride. Now, the bottom line on feeding wethers correctly is that if you feed them correctly, they are much less likely to get urinary stones. When they're small and they're growing, basically when somebody buys wethers from me, I tell them buy 1 bag of goat feed, just one. So if you buy a commercial goat feed, it is going to have the calcium and the phosphorus balanced. So you don't need to worry about that because that imbalance is what causes struvite stones. And if they're still growing really fast, meaning that they're less than half of their adult weight, then feeding them alfalfa hay is also fine because they can use that extra calcium to grow their bones when they're small, because too much calcium can cause calcium stones, which basically can cause a blockage, and then they wind up dying because they can't pee. And so it's really, really important that wethers, basically, once your wethers are more than 50% of their adult weight, they really do fine just on whatever they find in the pasture and then grass hay in the barn or grass hay in the winter. They no longer need, I tell people you buy 1 bag, if they're taking home 2 or 3 wethers, it's like buy 1 bag of goat feed. You're basically using this as a bribe, to get them friendly. So you hand feed them until that 50-pound bag is gone, and then you do not buy another one. And with the alfalfa hay, same thing. You can feed that until they're about 50% of their adult weight. And then after that, gradually switch them over to grass hay. They will probably not be too happy about that because alfalfa seems to be a lot tastier, and most goats seem to like that a lot more. Now, if you happen to have pet does, then you don't have to worry as much about the incorrect diet causing urinary calculi, because does have a much larger urethra. So they can still get stones, but the problem with male goats is that their urethra is really, really small. So literally something the size of a grain of sand can cause a blockage and kill them. Does have a much larger urethra. So even though they will get stones, they don't have trouble passing them like the male goats do. However, that does not mean that you can totally spoil your female goats by giving them, everything in the candy store, because what can happen to them is they're just going to wind up obese. And obese does are much more likely to have a precocious udder. So many times you see on social media and Reddit and all these places, somebody's like, I've got a pet doe and there's no intact buck here and she's got an udder and oh my gosh, what do I do? And it is shocking to me how many people will respond and say, oh, well, she must be pregnant if she has an udder. Because the reality is there is this thing called a precocious udder, which some goats will get. They usually don't get it until they're about 3 or 4 years old. And they usually don't get it unless they're overweight, because their body is like, oh, I got all these calories. What should I do? Oh, I know. Let's make milk. We also have a podcast episode where I talked to Dr. Jamie Stewart from Virginia Tech about this topic. So if you've already got a doe that has a precocious udder, head on over to the podcast and give that a listen, because she's got a lot of great information in there. And so that's one reason you really do not want to feed if you've got a doe as a pet, you do not want to be giving her goat feed, which is 16% protein, and alfalfa, which has even higher protein, because she does not need that. And so she's much more likely to wind up with a precocious udder, and she's also going to get obese. It can be a struggle to keep dry does from getting obese as they get older and they're not bred. You have to be really strict about not giving them treats and stuff, because their bodies are basically like not used to, but like their body is thinking like, oh, their body is made to reproduce and to continue the species, right? And so it is meant to get pregnant on an annual basis and to maintain a good body condition based on that. So when a doe has zero stress in her life, then it is very easy for them to become overweight. Many years ago, all the way back in 2005, a little 4-H girl came to us and she bought 4 goats, 3 does, and a wether from us. The idea was she was going to breed the does and show them in 4-H, but she was afraid to breed them because she's afraid something would go wrong, and she really loved her goats. And so she kept them all dry for their entire lives, and she kept in touch all those years. And so, whenever people ask me like, oh, do does live longer if they're never bred? Actually, the reality is they live a shorter life. And the problem is because of the challenge that people have with obesity with those dry does. Her goats just really struggled with obesity, and they were on a salad bar diet. Like they were just out there all the time. Her father did plant alfalfa in the field though. And so given the choice, like they want the sweet, tasty stuff. And so I think that was a problem. They really should have been in a pasture that was 100% grass and browse. Things might have been better for them. But one of them died of a heart condition when she was only 9 years old. And the others, one of them that she got from us that had already freshened, that one actually lived the longest, the goat that had freshened twice. The 2 that were dry does their whole life that she bought as kids, those 2 did not live that long. They only lived, I think, like 9 and 11 years. And typically my does, after kidding, they live to be 12, 13, even 15 or 16 years old. So you really have to be careful. If you get pets, I usually recommend wethers, because they're much easier keepers, and they do great just on a good quality grass hay. And by good quality, I mean just green. Okay. That means that they're not going to, that you don't want them to cut it after it's gone to seed and it's all stemmy, because that's tough. It's not sweet anymore. You don't want it to sit out there for a couple weeks before they bale it, because then it's going to be all bleached. The vitamin A and the vitamin E are going to be all gone. And so then they're going to be more likely to have, issues with vitamin A and E deficiency. So just a good, nice green grass hay. And it really doesn't matter what kind of grass. If it's a mixed grass, that's great, because each grass has a slightly different nutritional profile. But again, if they're wethers, they're very easy keepers. And honestly, the biggest problem I see people with wethers is they love them to death. They want to give them all the treats. They equate love with food. They want to give them all the treats and stuff. And they wind up overweight and with secondary mineral deficiencies that are caused by getting too much of something else. So I talk about the difference between primary and secondary mineral deficiencies in other videos. But basically, there is no such thing as like, oh, I'm just going to give my goat this thing. It can't hurt. Like, yes, it can hurt, especially with wethers who don't need a lot of extra supplements and that kind of stuff. So I hope you have found this helpful, and that if you have wethers or pet does yourself, that this is giving you some ideas on the proper way to feed them. And if you're selling kids, feel free to give a link to this video to people who are buying your kids, so that they know how to correctly feed those kids after they take them home. And so that they won't be killing them with kindness by giving them all kinds of high calorie foods that they don't need, and causing problems like urinary calculi and obesity and things like that can cause problems for them. So I hope this has been helpful. If you've got any questions, feel free to post in the comment section below and we'll get back to you. Bye for now.